We've kind of hit the process where there's still a little bit of development to do. So we're beginning this rehearsal period really like a script development workshop, supporting Emteaz in kind of looking at some various ideas and ways of refining the tension that's going to drive the play. And then once that kind of redraft has happened and we sit down and start the rehearsal process, then for me it's very much about making sure that we're honouring what the playwright sees as being the essential kind of relationships and tensions that are going to drive the play and hold an audience. My experience has been that there's very little difference between the way we make drama in Australia and the way it's made in the UK. And I think that's for a number of reasons. I think we're grown up on English texts, you know, from Shakespeare to, I was just saying, talking the last few days about, you know, Pinter and Stoppard, and they're the kind of things that we study at school. And then right through to the point that if you look at a lot of Australia's leading theatre companies and playwriting advocacy organisations, they're actually headed up at the moment by English people. So there's a real synergy between the way we look at text analysis and dramaturgy and script development in Australia to, I think, the way it's done in the UK. Yeah. There's been a resurgence, I think, in dramaturgs in the last sort of 5 years in Australia, but a lot of it, sadly, is linked, I think, to the kind of financial state of the company and the project. And generally, when wages are cut, the first position that seems to get cut so often is the dramaturg. And then the director takes on that responsibility with the arrogance that directors have of going, well, I can do that.
No, but there is a close similarity between the roles. So.
There is, but I think generally it works so much better if you have a director and a dramaturg and a writer, because the dramaturg acts as that foil to support the writer, channel kind of feedback through a single supportive kind of point. So I think it's most effective when there's a dramaturg in the room. One of the things that's fascinating about the play is taking something that's based on a text that feels so dated in a way when you look at the novel and its significance then you look at the world that we're living in now and the notion of, you know, someone killing an Arab and the repercussions and the... So one of the things that I think is going to be fascinating is looking at the way the themes of the play spiral to something so much greater than they were initially dealing with. I think within this, the key has been, it's not just about the staging of the story. It's been about revisiting the story through a modern lens. And what is interesting with that is that some of the things that were of lesser importance in the original, the character of the Arab, who I think in the original novel is intended to be incidental, but you look at that through a modern lens and go, he's only ever referred to as the Arab. He's the person that is killed. He's the catalyst for the... But there's no depth, there's no kind of humanity in the way that character has been drafted. There's actually a kind of a really offensive kind of colonial tone to the way that story... It's completely dehumanised. And so I think what's interesting about this, as much as kind of transferring it from novel to stage, is about transferring a story, a classic story from that period, and looking at it again through the eyes of 2015 and seeing how differently we view the world and how differently we weigh up tragedy and loss and weigh our actions. I hope it raises questions around the certain kind of perpetual injustice to a certain extent, the fact that are we learning from the past, or are we continuing to make the same mistakes over and over and over? And what, hopefully, the piece will kind of look at just raising the question of what choices do we need to make individually in order to move forward to some sort of reconciliation. And I think that's a really interesting and I think it's an interesting approach that Emteaz is taking to this story.
Because of the stage we're at with the script and the fact that we've got Emteaz with us this week as well, what you ordinarily have is a script set in stone with no playwright anywhere, so you respect that in a different way. And as the actor, you get to make decisions about the background and decisions about things that haven't necessarily been put in the script, whereas we've kind of got quite a lot of the decisions from the original novel. And actually, we've got a fluidity in quite a lot of the big decisions at the moment, with Emteaz being with us still. So it's almost a fun reversal of that process, or that state of being.
Yeah, it's sort of a luxury that you don't get with a text which is known or has been written specifically in a certain way. Because we had a great discussion with Emteaz yesterday, and Fraser also, where we talked about, so who are these characters really? What do they want? Why are they here? What is their relationship? Because these are things that aren't discussed in the book.
That's the thing, isn't it? That's the thing that Emteaz was really angry about. She said yesterday that she had a visceral reaction to the fact that they were just written out of the book. These women who are hugely affected. Once you start approaching the idea of a reaction to that novel, and a reaction giving the women a voice that don't have a voice, you just start thinking about the absolutely far-reaching consequences of that action for the people around them, and go, well, there is a story there.
We had a really interesting discussion about him afterwards, because we were divided. There was the half of the group that went, this is really interesting because he's obviously, his social skills, one of the people in the group said, is he autistic? The way he approaches things, there's something really interesting going on there, and wanted to know more. And then there was the other half of the group that just hated the book, absolutely hated that he could be so cold and just so blinkered to everything, and they couldn't get on board with that. So I was on the half that was like, God, it's really interesting. So how can he do that and react to that and be like that? And I was fascinated. So then to then get this job was great, because I already had that interest anyway. Yeah.
I think it's a really, really important question for Marie's character. I mean, she's engaged to be married to him, and he is an outsider in society, and she met him the day after his mother's funeral. They ended up starting a relationship. And so I think it becomes an incredibly important question that I actually spoke about with Katie and with Marcus before I met Fraser, the director. Who is the woman that would be with a man like that? What's her state of mind? What's her state of self-esteem? Does she find him fascinating and interesting, like that side of the story, or is she clutching onto a person that will give her any attention? And so it doesn't matter that he seems to be a social monster. So that's a huge decision for Marie. I'm slightly more of the opinion that to be with a man like that, to be with a human like that, if she has any capacity for empathy and wishes to live in society, then she must be clutching onto him as the only raft that she can have. I think. Marie also says, he doesn't let things bother him. I wish I could be more like that. And I suppose we all do wish we could be a bit more like that sometimes. But the idea that he never can and doesn't have that part of his psyche, that part of his soul, that becomes terrifying to me after a while. I find him quite frightening as a concept, like that person.
Yeah.
I think there's the perpetuity, the never-ending cycle of it. So it stops being about these women in this scenario, in this story, and starts being about reconciliation between people who are, there's a schism between them for whatever reason. There's you're of Arab heritage, and I'm a part of the white colonial influence, or any couple that have that kind of rift. So you're a man, I'm a woman, or that's very simplistic, but today I'm a migrant seeking help, and you're an established third-generation European dweller. So you've got that couple and that friction, and can it ever be resolved? If they have been telling this story again and again and again, will they ever turn around and make peace? Or will they always be coming at it from two sides, I think.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think actually how I felt when I read the book and what I thought the book was about, because actually when we sat as a group and we talked about it, we focused solely on him and his awkwardness and his inability to relate and to be humane, and that was really the only aspect of it. And actually I think our characters are the complete opposite of that, and we do feel, and I think there's Emteaz has touched on the relationship between us and whether or not we're sorry for each other for what's happened to each other, and whether or not there's a guilt as well between us.
When during the process of designing the script, wasn't quite finalised, and still obviously isn't quite finalised. Fraser and I decided that the space, the world of the play should be more abstracted, and sort of pick out on some of the themes of the piece and create a feeling or an ambience or a space in which any kind of details that come in after that via the script can breathe a little. So the space is a series of different sort of symbols, which I'll talk through now and explain a bit further. First of all, this feeling of that it is set very much in Algeria during the 1940s, and this time of tension between French colonialism and Algerian tradition. So the floor itself is made up of these Algerian tiles that have been shattered, broken, sort of a symbol of the fragility of the world, of the peace, of the women. And then these screens at the back, from a practical point of view, serve a backdrop to the world and allow for the projections, but equally representative of other elements too. This circular piece sort of symbolising the sun, and all these references to the sun and the intense heat of the sun. And when Alex arrives, she might talk a little bit more about what she's thinking of doing lighting-wise. But this idea that this piece could sort of light up very intensely, be almost too difficult to look at. So this circle, I really wanted it to be a circle for this idea of it's unresolved. It feels like it should be complete, but then it is broken. And the fragility that we see within this crack mirrors itself in the fact that these are fabric as well. Equally, it's about loss and death. It's also about forgiveness, acceptance and peace. And so although it's got these sort of harsh, clashing images and this idea of heat and tension, I wanted it to be beautiful, to kind of mirror those ideas also. And I feel like there is a certain cohesion to the piece that might speak of that kind of peace and reconciliation beyond. This is what I'm offering up now, and it might be that during the rehearsal process you feel like there's other elements that need to be in there. But this essence of a cafe, these suggestions of beach and of crumbling architecture equally, and then this currently is a pile of legal documents and all of the kind of court case, representative of court case stuff. So that allows some movement, some freedom of interaction, and obviously is up for grabs in terms of how it's positioned and how you relate to it. I'm thinking that this material will probably be a wooden floor. So we've looked at different alternatives, whether it is like a dance floor or on wood. But my feeling is I'd like to get some depth to this crack. I want it to feel like it is a crack rather than a printed line. So equally, we're looking at the option of printing on wood, just to give you an idea of what sort of surface you might be on. But yeah, you can have a touch and feel. It felt like the starting point should be kind of a late 40s feel. So obviously there is a timelessness to it, But I felt like it was quite important to have a nod to that period, and equally to kind of then address the slight differences between pied noir style and an Arab style. To have that distance time-wise also allowed us to make some comments that I think would be slightly too pertinent today. And so the thing that I was really interested in is this idea that the kind of Western influence is a much more tailored approach, and the Arab much looser. But I still kind of wanted the styles of dress to be similar within that idea. So again, this is where my mind's at, but it might be that you've had some quite different thoughts about where you want to take your characters. Again, I want to be wary of kind of making her feel like she belongs in this world and she doesn't, because I don't think that's right at all. But there was something about her colours almost reflecting the world a little bit that I was interested in pushing. But a looseness to her clothing, a comfortableness in the heat, and this interested that she's interested in fine things. She's interested in dressing up and looking nice, and so a few jewels thrown in there. So another thing about footwear, I did wonder at one point, is are they barefoot in this world? Is there something about the seeing them sort of on these tiles in this cafe, but it is a beach also? Like, is there something about barefoot over and above little 40s court shoes? Don't know.
Yeah.
Question for the air.